Hello and welcome to the swim brief. My friend Garrett McCaffrey, aka Garrett McCafferty, aka Gareth, as my boss sometimes calls him. What are some other good names that you get when people screw your name up?
I get Jarrett, obviously.
Yeah,
Jarrett
yeah.
with a J. Or
Mhm.
you know it's a weird one? Eric.
Eric.
When I call in my order, a lot of times on my coffee or on my order, it's either Eric or Derek with a D.
Derek.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The
Yeah. And then the
easiest.
McCaffrey REY throws them off too. A lot of McCafferty.
Yeah.
But I know you can relate DeSantis.
The easiest way for me to remember it is always two R's, two T's, two C's, two F's, and the rest of it writes itself. You know what I mean?
There you go.
You got
Yeah.
to get all those double letters first, and then you know what to do. I did a
Yep.
poor job here as we came back to some brief podcast of even sort of doing the minimal amount of bio work, on my first guest, Nico Messer. So I'm going to try to do a little bit better job here with you. Obviously, people who have been reading me probably know who you are. But if we just take a step back, right now you're head coach of Phoenix Swim Club. You've been head coach since 2013. Is that the conversation we just had?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. I've been with the club since 2011 and then
Right.
2013. I think that's right.
And
Yep.
people probably best know you from before that as a swimming media figure. Um,
More
like
people, but not my swimmers. But yeah,
right,
more
right,
people do.
right. Now everybody that you coach has no idea that that happened, right? I mean, that's how
No.
fast it goes.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but you were my intern at Flow Swimming, and you did a lot of great work for me there and produced a lot of content that was really valuable to the brand as I tried to develop it. Um, what
You
was
have to
that
work
time like
on
for you?
how subtle you are with your sarcasm because, you could really mislead or possibly insult your guests if you're not careful. But
No, you were um, uh, the man at Flow Swimming, and that's still a website for people our age. That's deeply influential. There's a lot of things about it that have not been replaced, in my opinion, and I don't want to turn this into a bash of any current websites, but there's some unique character there that hasn't quite been figured out in a modern media landscape. You and I were accredited media at 2008 Olympic trials together. That's probably where we really bonded there in the fire, in the forge of the first big show in Omaha. And you went on to be accredited media at the 2008 Beijing Olympics.
I wasn't accredited. I was telling some
Oh,
of my swimmers some of those behind the scenes stories of getting into events in China and
you were
being very
completely
lucky
unaccredited.
being very lucky that I'm not still in China in a jail
Right.
or something because literally walked in to the village. It was just the mentality at Flow. We were like, we're doing this. We'll ask for forgiveness later. We're not going to ask for permission. And we just kind of the Chinese people had no real idea what to do with a tall blonde white guy who just kept insisting that he needed to go in and
Yeah.
just insisting, yep, I got to get in there swimming. I got to get in there. I got to go. And they just didn't know what to do. And yeah, it was kind of crazy. So it wasn't accredited. I was accredited in 2009 at World Champs somehow. But
Okay.
yeah,
You
I
managed
was
to go
not accredited in
official.
Beijing. I was yeah. Just want to make sure that's clear. We were totally in Beijing. I got to go to some cool stuff. The flow track guy was really well connected. None of us had media passes. It's really expensive to get media passes at the Olympics and even at any of these international ones. But we got to
Yeah.
get some good events through sponsors and friends that were also there. But we were not accredited. But anyway, just wanted to. I was reminiscing about that recently, about how I was there and I interviewed Elaine Bernard and stuff like that because that was recently coming up on some podcasts I was listening to, and I just realized how stupid that was of me.
Well, I mean, story of all our lives. We do stupid stuff when we're in our mid 20s, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember that was a part of that whole time. just sort of don't ask for permission, just ask for forgiveness, maybe
Well,
later.
and in defense of the current day medias, it's now like expected. Whereas
Right.
at that point with Flow Swimming, it was the first. So I would love to say that it was just our winning personalities, Chris, but I do think that there is some of that, but I think that really it was just a market that was thirsty for content, and we gave it to them. And we got workout videos coming out here and there, and social media, you can see what everybody's doing nowadays.
Right.
It was just the forefront of it, and we were lucky. I don't want to take credit away from you because I know it was your genius that really drove it and your insight, but we
Well,
were
I think
lucky to be
most people
part of
know that, Garrett, so you
yeah.
don't need to, you don't need to say it here in front of everybody. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, as you talk about it, it makes me nostalgic for a time period, like still very early social media time period when you
Yep.
would still just go to a website, directly rather than
Right.
sort of clicking through like a Twitter link or, I mean, you just be like, man, I wonder what's on Flow Swimming today. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You just go there and see. Um,
People are still kind of geared to television at that point. It was kind of a channel, and like it was a life that everybody thinks they want to live, where you just travel. I drove from Austin, Texas, like we did this challenge recently. My wife and I were just playing a game with some friends on a Saturday night Zoom meeting, and we started counting all the states we've been to, and I've been to like 44 or something crazy, and
Whoa.
it's because of Flow Swimming days. Like I
Yeah.
drove from Austin up to Minneapolis and stopped everywhere in between at all those Big Ten schools all the way, and then I went
Yeah.
from Austin through the SEC, Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, all like through all the Carolinas, Florida, all the way down to like Isla Morada. So it was an insane. I'm very nostalgic. I do get a lot of like people who were, on deck now that still are like, oh, that was awesome. And so I love that connection. And I love that I got to do it, but I would not be here today if I was still trying to live that lifestyle.
No.
And I know people do, and I have a lot of respect for the people who are able to travel constantly for their job. And, I was sleeping on couches, like just like it's more than just travel. It's like fend for yourself travel at the next spot every time. And yeah, in your 20, that definitely shaped the mentality of somebody who was just ready to get into the Olympics because he was in Beijing. So
Right. Right.
I'm this close. I'm just going to get in. And that was our mentality. It was the Wild West. We were doing the right thing by getting the content to everybody. We were going to do it. As only 20 somethings can do. With
Yeah.
not as much regard for tact and experience as we do now, or we would now, but also
Just
the energy that allowed us to do it.
That's right. We were unofficially sponsored by Rockstar Energy Drinks at that time. I mean, they didn't know, but
Among many others, yeah, among many others.
All right, let's fast forward to the present day, because one of the things
Yeah.
I'm doing with people is, it's kind of like you have to balance this, right? Because people are like, oh my God, do I have to hear about COVID in another context? But also, one of the things I've thought about in this time is like, I've come back to coaching. I'm coaching here in New Jersey. I'm talking to people about what it's been like here in New Jersey. And it's been pretty different because the US has basically a state by state response to everything. It's been a little bit different for swim clubs. Like I talked to friends in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, swim clubs have just been completely decimated in their ability to get in. So first, just as a coach, talk a little bit of what this time period has been like for you, all the way sort of back to March, when we were very slowly finding out that our lives were never going to be the same.
Yeah, we were all set to go to Oklahoma for our sectional championships in March, and had a pretty decent state meet in February that led us to believe we were going to be in the right place when we needed to be. And then, obviously things just got crazy, right? And immediately those things got taken. And, we were all part of a month or so of being out of pools and just everything kind of being shut down. And then in May, during that time, we did Zoom dry land, and I tried to do a daily Zoom morning meeting with the kids, either dry land or just check-ins the other 2 days a week, just so that there was some opportunity. I would
Right.
get somewhere between 2 and 8 people at those dry lands or in those check-ins, but those 2 and 8 people were relying on it. And
Yeah.
we weren't charging at that time, but we were lucky enough to be pretty good financially, and since then also got the the loans and everything that took care of it. So I felt like, I got to do my job and I got to be there. My job is really to be there for these kids, especially in tough periods when they're trying to figure out. I mean, looking back at all their systems were crashing around them. These seniors who had been building everything towards this graduation and transition, towards their, other events around it, had just been robbed of all that stuff. And it just didn't make sense because the systems weren't supposed to do that. And so these kids needed, connection. And I think the second we got back in the pool, everybody was so grateful. And that lasted maybe a month. And then everybody got like real bored of just training.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 months, but everybody stopped being just grateful that they weren't at home and that they could be around their friends. And, we've taken it very seriously at Phoenix Swim Club with our protocols, and, we're taking temperatures, and all coaches are wearing masks, and we have them in their masks till they get ready to get in. And everybody, we were going 2 per lane all summer until we had to transition when high school started back up to, normal hours, 3:30 to 7:30, when the kids can actually swim. And so we had to go 4 per lane. But, we've been really good about reminding them that we're staying at least that 8 feet apart, because the lanes are 8 feet wide and you kind of have a gauge on what that should be. So we're able to kind of do it. And I think we've all found that swimming is relatively safe.
Yeah.
So it was great. It was a social outlet. We were, able to be around people, and then they started getting competition hungry, and I get it. So we started stepping them up because we have a great facility and all the equipment that we need. So we started stepping them up on Saturday mornings, but that's 6 a.m. and, just inner group, not even just inner squad, like it's not just the whole team. So, we realized very quickly, A, they were way out of racing shape, and B, like the motivation is only there if we can race them. And like part of the big piece of the equation is racing them. I mean, if they don't get the reward, it's really hard to just put in the work. And the racing experience is what's going to help them get faster. So we did those step up meets. And the state of Arizona, like you said, there's a lot of differences, and state of Arizona has been pretty wide open with any kind of regulations. So a lot of California teams have been reaching out about meets. A lot of kids from the Northwest have been reaching out about possibly coming down and swimming for the time being with us.
Wow.
So it's kind of a weird situation because there's a lot of opportunity, and that's terrifying during a pandemic, because it's just, it's great. And because it's now a competitive market, because if you're not putting meets together and giving your kids opportunities to participate in meets, you're risking losing members, because it's a very competitive market here right now, very easy to jump around. And with no regulations on meets, teams can do as many meets as they want. And I've been talking with a lot of the other clubs, and got together with a few other of the clubs to put together a pretty good series this past weekend, where we did a prelim last weekend at separate pools. My team chose to do it virtually inter squad, but there were options. Mission Viejo came out to Mesa and participated in the prelims. So, some really fast swims. And then Scottsdale hosted Rio and a couple other local teams. And we're merging the results, and we're coming together this weekend for a final type situation. And it was a fight to get to that in a lot of ways, because it's terrifying. And because should we be doing that the week after Thanksgiving? Like I don't know. So we wanted it to be, it's a tough line between providing a safe environment and figuring out how you can be creative within that, and how you can push that, to its maximum capacity, and how you make decisions for people. And should it be our call that these kids can't compete if the local meet is available and we're invited, or should it be the parents' call whether they compete or not? So we've really kind of left it up to the parents. And so far this weekend and I think we've had everybody that could participate and choose to. So, that's only, we've done 2 sanctioned, 3, we'll have our 4th sanctioned opportunity this weekend that our club has offered. Inter squad only. We keep it under 75 as the number that we've been comfortable with. We've, as part of high school, we've hosted and helped bigger meets than that this fall through high school, because high school season went through all the way to the championship here in Arizona, which, it was very fortunate because there were no exposure outbreaks. Obviously, kids in the area got COVID, but no signs of any kind of spread through meets of 180. And there was cycling in and out of heats and stuff. So there was never anybody like on the deck in the place at the same time. And anybody who's been on Phoenix Swim Club's deck, knows that there's enough space. I've had coaches from
Yeah,
out of town compared to a carnival sometimes, because we put 1,000 people on that deck plus parents, and it gets very crowded. But we have 75 people on that deck. It's like,
right.
hello, hello, hello.
I mean,
Like, we could totally like put more people in other places, but we just want to be so safe, that we're being careful.
Yeah, I always think back to my Georgia Tech days, in terms of like pool space, how it can be almost like a curse sometimes, because we had stands for 2,000 people at that 10 lane 50-meter pool, and you could drive a semi truck down for down the deck space, and we'd get a home meet with like 100 fans, which is not a bad draw for like a little college Division I dual meet, and it literally looked like nobody was there, like nobody at all, and
It's
it
weird.
was so quiet. And I mean, so that must be it was really weird here too. I mean, we've as people who've been following know, we're actually in a temporary, hopefully, shutdown here in New Jersey. We've been no organized sporting activities as of this past Saturday and all the way through January 2nd, but we were able to actually have 3 meets since pools open back up. And part of that's owing to, here at Wahoo's, we own our own facility. So it's given us, like we're missing that extra hoop to jump through facility wise.
Nice.
In terms of stuff, we're insured. We have our own insurance beyond USA Swimming's insurance. So, we're not as worried, I guess, about liability around some things, but we even to have a meet in November with another team, that necessitated we had a meet in New Jersey in mid-November where not a single kid waited in between races inside the pool building. So he had tents set up outside and space heaters and everybody bundled up. We're really lucky that, the weather was kind of like high 40s, low 50s, like it wasn't, but you're absolutely right that the motivation, just in the same way we saw that, kids were so relieved, and kids back here in New Jersey got back in the water right around June. And then we had that first competition in August. And that actually ended up going quite well, but it went so well that we were like, okay, we got to just keep going. So just kept going through this time period, and I feel lucky that we were able to pull that competition off in November, because now we're looking at this period where obviously it's going to be pretty much impossible for kids on our team to compete for this next month. And then we'll go through another period where they start training again. And, most of these kids, if I'm being totally fair, they will be all right. Right. The hardest parts are, kids that are like a senior in high school who, I feel bad for
and now
kids
juniors and sophomores with recruiting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And people who were seniors in high school last year, like I just feel really, really bad for them. This is going to be an experience that they'll feel for a long time. And I think, while getting away from anything too political, although it's kind of impossible when you're discussing Corona, I do think in general, writ large here in the United States, we have often erred on the side of keeping kids away from stuff. I think kids are like people under the age of 18 have gotten a really raw deal through
I
this
kind
whole
of
time
agree.
period.
I totally agree, and it feels that way right now. But in a lot of struggle situations, there's opportunity for strength and growth,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And what these kids are learning is that the system is not always going to be there for you, right? These systems that we've sold them on, education, higher education, even sports and stuff like that. That stuff feels so permanent because it's such a huge piece of their lives. But at the end of the day, that could be all taken away. And at
right.
the end of the day, all of that stuff ends. You finish, swimming, and most of us, and then you finish school again, most of us, like, meaning like you come to like that destination, right? Where you
Right.
finished it, you've gotten there,
Right.
it's over. And now it's like all these systems aren't here. What are you going to do? And these kids
Right.
are kind of getting a rough glimpse, and it sucks that they don't get their proms and that they don't get their senior trips and their graduation ceremonies. And what really sucks for us is that they don't get their opportunities to go times that determine whether or not they're going to get into school. And those are the kids that, you're right, they're going to be okay, but are we, they're not going to be in the place that we want them to be, because
Or
as
that they
club
want to be.
coaches, our goal is to give them the opportunity,
Yeah.
the best possible opportunity to swim at the next level. Our goal is constantly just helping them, become autonomous, hopefully, so that they can deal with whoever they have next, but not looking at it as like, we'll finish this now. It's like, how do we set this person up for the next stage in the best possible way? And as club coaches, we have to give them opportunities to race to do that, for that transition. But now even that, I'm kind of like, should that be our mission anymore? Should our mission be like college swimming as opportunities? Because I'm kind of shaken by the system too. And does college swimming look all that reliable right now? So it's kind of tricky. I feel bad for them, but I think that they are learning, like all of us right now, that you need to take care of yourself, and you need to be the one that takes control of change. And hopefully this generation, which some of them have proven it, and I think voting numbers and turnout in voting has to prove that there's a bigger part of the population that's interested in taking control of their future a little bit more. So hopefully that's something that we can build on with them.
That's true. I think you uncover a silver lining there, which is, I think with especially a lot of the populations that we coach, we're talking about kids that in February of 2020, they were scheduled to death. Like they just went from place to place to place on to the next thing. In a way,
like we all did.
Yes, like
we
all did.
Were scheduled.
Yeah, which almost at a rate that's sort of unprecedented in history. And if there's been one really nice thing is that everybody has a little bit more time where they just have to figure out what they're going to do with it. Like, okay, you've got this block of time. For me, the best analogies were just actually having that experience starting my own business. That was the first time in my life that like I didn't have a job, where somebody else was like, you got to show up at this time and you got to be here and here. It was just like, no, you figure it out. When are you going to work today? And it was really, really hard to figure that stuff out at the beginning. And I would have all these days where I just spent, hours and hours sort of spinning my wheels, because I was like, I got to be doing something, but I didn't know what to do. I wasn't organized about what was going around. And so you're right. There's a lot to learn in terms of just being sort of self-directed and in control of your own destiny as you're forced to take a break. That could come at any moment. It could be, we could be having this conversation a month from now, and all of a sudden Arizona, has decided to regulate more. Probably won't happen. More than likely based on history, but you never know.
Wait, especially in this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe
then it'll be 2021. Everything's going to be good in 2021, Garrett.
Oh yeah. That's what 2019 was saying about 2020. I like the comparison of a freeway.
Yeah.
We've all been on this freeway, and we've all been, trying to get somewhere, and the destination is kind of irrelevant, because we've all just been trying to go as fast as we possibly can that direction. And we haven't slowed down to look at the accident here, or maybe you even got in a little accident, got to keep moving. You know what I mean? We haven't slowed down. And now all of a sudden everybody's been forced off the road, and they're sitting at home looking at their car like, ooh, I should have taken care of this, this, and this. And it's like you said, it's a very hard experience that I think every adult gets to in some phase or stage. There's some people who just stay with the system. They always have a job. They always follow and that's great. But at some point, everybody kind of breaks off from the beaten path and does stuff that isn't, like you said, managed by somebody else. It's up to you. And I think you're right. It is so freaking hard that as adults, we want to try to protect the kids from it because it's so hard. But this is the best lesson for them. Imagine if you could have learned that at 18, how much better you would have been in your 20s. So you're right. Silver lining 100%. And, it's good that we can see that from opposite ends where, you're right now kind of shut down, and I am, in a competitive market for meets right now where we're going to get into a championship meet next weekend. And I
Yeah.
couldn't be more excited. I'm
Yeah.
thrilled. I'm so pumped to watch the kids swim fast again.
Yeah. The other thing I always think about is, and I've told this story in a lot of different formats, but I think it's apropos of this, is when I went to swimming college. I swam at Colby College in Waterville, Maine, Division III school that's just opened a 10-lane 50-meter pool. It's incredible. First 50-meter pool in Maine. So I'm excited to see that one day. But when I went off to swim there, I really struggled my first 2 years swimming in college. I basically, you could say I plateaued, but maybe I actually backslid a little bit is more accurate way to describe my swimming timing wise. And I was really, really frustrated. And one of the things I was frustrated by was just, I was trying to do everything my coach told me to do, but I never could quite pull it off well. Um, and I remember I had like a real soul searching conversation with a teammate once, because this teammate of mine, he was just thriving. Like he was doing so great. And I couldn't understand why, if I was, doing everything coach said, why this guy who didn't seem like he really was, was doing so well. And I said, like, what do you do? Like, and, when coach does X or Y, and he's like, oh, I just don't worry about that. And it was the first time I realized, like, as a swimmer, like you could just choose your own path. And I'm not saying like, just, this is not a PSA to swimmers to just like ignore your coach, but actually you're going to have moments where you just realize like, no, I'm in control. Like I make the decisions. Even I'd say to smirking faces of kids I coach all the time, like, you've made a decision to be here, make a decision to push off the wall. Like, I know maybe your mom, drove you here and was like, you have to go into that swim practice. And now it appears that I'm standing here and forcing you to push off the wall. But if you really, really didn't want to, you don't have to, you know? All right. I want to pivot. I got to pivot because you and I have had a conversation that we've maybe had hours worth of off the podcast, and I wanted to get it on the podcast. Then we went into a long break of the podcast. And maybe now we've gotten to a point where we've given it enough time that we can really have maybe not the best version of this conversation, but a good version of this conversation. I want to talk about Shawn Hutchison. And because, he's somebody that obviously is completely disgraced in the world of swimming, has been now for, is it, are we coming up on 3 years or 2 years of,
I think 3.
I think we're coming up on 3 here in February when Ariana Cookers Smith wrote to the world what Shawn had done to her. He's banned from coaching swimming. And you swam for Shawn. You were an athlete that trained under Shawn. Both. Well, actually, just tell me, because I realize as we discuss this, like I don't have maybe all the details straight. Tell me a little bit about how you got to know, like, what was your introduction to Shawn Hutchison as a swim coach?
I was lucky to be a walk-on at University of Washington in 2001.
Okay.
And had swam for King Aquatic Club at the time with Jerry Oshesky and Kevin Zacher. And, my freshman year went well. And then after my sophomore year, Shawn took over King. Or I guess it was during my sophomore year, Shawn took over King. And I went back for the summers to train. And that summer in 2003, because I was going into 2004, I really enjoyed the group and him. And it was he was the first coach that really explained to me why we were doing things and took the time to like kind of just talk to me even. Right. And so I decided that summer, because we were going into an Olympic year, that my best chance for making Olympic trials was to train with Sean. You know, he never pushed that. He never told me I needed to do that. He never even brought it up. But in hindsight, looking back, you know, like when I told him that I was going to stay, he was not surprised. He was like, I was hoping you were going to say that. So, you know, and that's a hindsight thing, you know, right. Definitely not at the time, because I continued to, you know, swim for him and get better and really like grow a passion for the sport. You know, and I can't change the fact that he is the person who really like lit the fire that has led me to, you know, everything I've done journalistically with the sport and everything with coaching too. Just a passion for the sport and how cool it is and how great it is. And, you know, he was coming from the East Coast with Bob and Michael. And like that summer when I decided, we went to Santa Clara and watched Michael break a world record in the 200 IM. And like, I was sold, you know? So, I continued to, I trained there for a year, didn't make Olympic trials, and then transferred out to Missouri, where I finished out my career, came back for the summers. But you know, my relationship with Sean did not stop. He was a huge piece of my ability to network with flow swimming. His introductions and his reputation at that time through the sport opened a ton of doors for me. So yeah, it was somebody who I, you know, caught up with when I could, always, you know, was able to talk with, like, and when I say always was able to talk with, we would talk probably when I wasn't training under him, maybe once or twice a year when we were at a meet or something like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, always very friendly. I looked at him as a mentor. And yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of just sets the stage. I don't know if you had specific questions.
Well, I mean, so you said you look back on that conversation you had about staying for the summer, and right, you didn't feel like, you know, he never asked you that directly, but was there stuff, you know, like now that you have more distance to it, now that you've been coaching yourself, was there stuff you look back at in the way that he coached where you go, gosh, that was kind of really coercive the way he did this or that or the other thing, in setting up a team or conducting a practice? Or
I don't think it was an obvious one. You know, I think a lot of coaches, and I think you kind of pivoted in this conversation pretty well when you talked about yourself as a swimmer, realizing that you can make those decisions yourself, because some swimmers and some coaches don't want that autonomy.
Right.
And they will do a lot of different things. Like Sean's tactic was the tactic that I use, and still to this day. And that's, I explain why we're doing it. I explain how it can help and why we're doing it when I'm getting resistance. So it wasn't necessarily that, but there were some subtle, like, just comments about other coaches not knowing what they're doing, or about him having examples of why he knew better than anyone else.
Well, he was always extremely confident, right? I mean, like I remember meeting him with you in 2008, and you could not come away from a conversation with him, you know, thinking like, that guy's a little unsure of himself. Like he really came across like, I know what to do here, and like I have got a plan for the future, and here's why. And he had a lot of like information to back it up. Like he was very, very persuasive in that way.
Yeah. And I think that I think that a lot of coaches, in good ways, like, are able to use information and use past successes to sell and create belief in themselves that that helps the swimmer get faster, because they don't have to worry for themselves. Sean would always say to me, as an example, like, yeah, just like the best example I can give is one time I was at a meet with Bob and Michael, and Bob asked me to warm up Michael. So I, you know, I got his splits, and I said, "Is that good?" And he goes, "I don't know, ask Bob." And I was kind of like, "Oh, okay." He's like, you know, it's a coach say, "I do" mentality. That's what Michael Phelps has. And I think he did until he, you know, probably had it. And then he got broken as an adult, and we saw a little bit of that. Right. And then he had to kind of come back. And I think him and Bob probably have like change that relationship, obviously, to this day, because I hope Bob just doesn't still demand him around as Bob's taking care of his children as his own grandchildren. And I'm sure they haven't. They've evolved.
Right.
But that was what Sean wanted from his swimmers is I say you do.
Yeah.
And because I know best. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of success in a lot of different areas of life like that. And so to say, was there manipulative behavior that I could look back and point to? No, but was I manipulated into believing that the only place that I could make Olympic trials, my best shot for making Olympic trials was not myself. It was training with him, with little kids, like with age group kids when you were a college kid.
Yeah.
And it was really hard. That was my first step outside of the system. Like, I'm getting off this beaten path. The kids on UW, my teammates on UW were like, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
And they were brutal to me that year, like drunk texts of way to make trials and like all sorts of they were brutal. It was hard because they were my friends and they were my teammates. I didn't want to leave them, but I wanted to do what was best for me. And I don't know that it was. I think I probably would have continued to improve. I was on a pretty good rate of improvement at UW, and I really became a totally different trainer. And I did drop time, and I did get better, and I did end up making national cuts. But I didn't get to where I thought I could be. I thought he was going to take me to Phelps land. I watched this 18-year-old kid do it. He knows everything about not Phelps land, but I did. I was convinced that I could make Olympic trials in 1 year, and that he was the person that could do it for me, not me. He was the person that could do it.
So fast forward to 2018 when Ari comes out with this. I mean, what was your gut reaction, and where do you sit with it now?
I just felt heartbroken. I was part of the formidable years there. Those years that I spent were Ari's first years in the senior group as a little 14-year-old. So that was always Ari to me. Ari was the little 14-year-old. That was just sweet as hell and would give you hell in the water because she'd just work you all day in practice.
Yeah.
But and I was really close with her older sister, Emily. So I really felt for Emily. And, I think really to understand it, you got to go back to 2013 when the murmurs started coming out.
Right.
And the rumors started coming out.
The USA Today piece came out, the Washington Post stuff.
Yeah. So, I was at Swimming World, and, there were a couple of situations with Sean's situation down in California that, I'd heard. And I'd even tried to ask some of the USA swimming people about one of them. He had a swimmer who was a high school swimmer who had not swum in college. She was actually decommitting to college to come swim. And I didn't understand because it didn't seem like the right move for this 18-year-old girl. In hindsight, I don't know that it was. And so there was a lot of
This is Dagny Knutson, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of things kind of coming up just around the system that when I left Swimming World, I was ready to be done with the journalistic kind of part of it because I was hitting close to home, and all the rumors on Ari were hitting pretty close to home. And you knew that Ari loved Sean. When I would go back for the summers, you knew she worshipped him, would do anything he said, and just through later years with Flow Swimming, hearing from some of the people on the national team, or even, through that 2007, 2008, really good group when they had all those girls training there, just some things just Ari would make it very obvious that, she had a special relationship with Sean, meaning just she knew his favorite kind of ice cream. And, I filmed a workout for Flow Swimming where it was just Sean and her. I was there obviously, so it wasn't one-on-one, but I'm sure that wasn't the first time that they had done that kind of practice. So I felt awful when Ari came out. I felt like I'd, had some fault for not protecting her and not, recognizing that. And it was hard. So yeah, I had the whole gamut of emotions, and I don't think that anybody has to be to blame other than Sean in this situation. so I think I've transitioned out of that, and it's a struggle for sure, but I think, like I said earlier, struggle can lead to strength. And I think that one of the strengths that I can kind of take out of it is a boundary um, standard,
Yeah.
that I know where I will draw a line for, all sorts of different protections, so that I can stay true to everything that comes along with the power of coaching and that responsibility. And that will protect, the athletes and me from any of those type of situations, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's hard to figure out what you do want to take away from, somebody who has given you a lot, and what you can kind of say, I, I recognize that as not the right thing. I recognize that as absolute disregard for, your responsibility as a coach and all of the great things that come with it, and the relationships that you create with these kids. They're a certain level of love. It is a certain level of, like, caring for somebody that you spend a ton of time with, that you are pursuing something, even though you're helping them pursue it. And I think that's where I really draw the line, is I
Right.
recognize that it's them pursuing it. It's not us together. And I've tried to really change that in my vernacular, even when I'm like, we need to do
Right.
this, or
Right.
we, and I'm
Right.
trying hard to stop saying we. It's not about we. You are there presenting opportunities. And it's really hard, because you see a lot of coaches get ahead for bragging about all of their stuff to their kids, and using that manipulative behavior of, like, this coach is an idiot, this is why I'm so smart, or even just,
Right.
this is why I'm so smart. It I don't want to coach that way. And I don't know that I would have recognized the fault in it had it not shaken the core of my coaching foundation.
Yeah. I mean, I'm listening to you as you bring up that guilt. And of course, it's not my job necessarily to like absolve you of guilt, but you and I did talk about on the phone. I remember right afterwards, like I was just on a rampage, like, because I think, everybody reacts differently to these situations. And so it was easy for me as somebody who had not been, and I've had some people in my life recently sort of make me realize this, that like I have a tendency to just like, start rapid firing out like people around the situation. Like I think I sort of went after Michael Brooks at that time, asking some, and I was asking, in fairness, I was asking some pointed questions. I think still probably worth answering, but Michael Brooks didn't abuse Ari.
No, and Michael Brooks knew nothing about that. Michael Brooks is probably one of the people farthest from it, as somebody who just came in. I don't know
Yeah,
Michael
no,
Brooks,
I
so
know.
I don't know if
So
he knows or not, but I don't
but
think I
but one of the other things I remember that you and I ended up in a fight somehow. I think probably because I was rushing around screaming at people and you were feeling a little bit guilty um, at that moment. Um, and that's probably why it's good we had some years for us both to get a little bit more perspective on what was going on there, because I don't think either of us at that time realized that's what we were doing. We were just feeling. Um, but I one of the things I am realizing more and more is um, that as somebody who abuses somebody like Sean does, like um, they have to groom everybody else in the system to make it work. Like and so in a different way, not in the same way, all the other people that were swimming there at that same time um, were were they were impacted by the way Sean was. They were coerced, I don't know, manipulated, whatever, however you want to say it, into participating in something. And um, uh, I feel more and more that the best way out of this situation is not attacking all those other people who were around. Because I think sometimes, like, I'm just so angry that I just want, like, it's so unsatisfying that, yeah, Sean's been banned from coaching, but otherwise there've been sort of a few consequences for him. Um, and so like you just want somebody else to suffer some consequences too, because you get so like I'm transposing second person. I get so angry, right? They just start firing around, and um, when in some ways the other people that were around in the system, I'm learning more and more, they were really hurt by what happened at the same time. Of course, not in the same way. I'm not comparing the scale, um, but they were. Do you think does that seem accurate to you?
Yeah, Sean was able to, and I used to respect it because he didn't have to ever interact with anybody he didn't want to. He never interacted with parents. He was able to really isolate himself from that, and he just lived a more private life that everybody just kind of thought that was how Sean did it. He wanted his own private life, and you didn't really know a lot about it, and that was the wall that he had built. So I don't have any reason to think anybody knew anything was going on outside of Sean and Ari. And, maybe at one point I wanted, you know, I guess a punishment or something, but I don't think anybody is getting better from that. And my biggest worry is just Ari. And, she is such a strong person for being able to now, become a wife and a mother. So I feel I just want her. I want to take that energy away from trying to like get angry at somebody else and just put it at support for her, because that's what I did. I'm mad at myself for not being there for her. So at this time, like just trying to throw support behind her would be the better use of energy than trying to point fingers at anybody else. Because yeah, I don't know. You could just get stuck in that for a long time.
Let me ask you some other things. I mean, uh, some things that I thought about down the line is, of course, you said he opened a lot of doors for you. Um, and I can guess at some point, like he was in your professional bios and resumes and all the stuff. Like, what was the process like of um, deciding, whether to purge that stuff or not purge that stuff? Like, wh- what was that like?
I it was pretty easy delete, but well, let's just be
Yeah,
honest. Like that,
but do you
people.
worry
I don't
that?
want strangers coming in and not understanding the relationship. But I'm also not here. I what he did with Ariana was deplorable. Like you cannot forgive it. But I also had to um, figure out what I could still take away. I can't just wipe my whole coaching like beliefs clean. And the man, um, I would like to be able to approach everyone, and this is a test of it, but that, a person is not their actions. A person is not their behavior. And that's not to forgive Sean in any way for anything that he's done, but it was something that I had to come to peace with and learn from, like I said, with, what you can take away from, making sure that you're setting systems for, obviously my team and obviously every other team that I'll ever be a part of to protect people from that. And I think I don't have to like take away some of the sets and some of the mental approaches that helped me in a race, or some of the pieces that he did give me, and I can't change that. He did a lot for me. And I don't know that I've fully processed it, I guess, as I'm trying to muddle my way through it. I don't know that I've fully processed it. The idea of like deleting him as a reference and everything was pretty simple, but
Right.
how I really compartmentalize where I would be without him, and how I would do, how I may have done things different. I don't know. It would have been a totally different path. So it's really hard to go back and say, I should have taken this turn off that path or that turn off that path, and recognize this. So it from a, he will not be on my resumes anymore. He will not be on my resumes anymore, but
Right.
he is, and I've not talked to him for years, more than 3 years, probably 4 or 5, but yeah, I don't have any interest in talking to him or anything, but I don't necessarily look back at that whole time as all bad.
Right. No, I mean, and I think, look, even here's an analogy for people who are listening who don't have a swim coach that sexually abused somebody, but think about your worst swim coach, your worst coach you ever had. You probably have stuff that you do that they did. I know I do. Like the worst coach I ever had, I've got 5 or 6 things that he did that I use all the time in practice. I mean, it
Yeah.
just because they work. Nobody is well, except for maybe Mark Schubert, but that's nobody's like pure satanic evil. Do you know what I mean?
Oh man, you just had to do it. Just had to do it. This is why the man won't look at me on the pool deck. Thanks, Chris, but that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's fine.
Well, maybe I'll edit this part out. Anyway, nobody. Okay, let me give it a hard stop.
Okay.
Nobody is like 100% pure evil, black, or white, pure good. There's everybody exists in the gray, and so I think it's a really interesting question. I mean, I had an incident where I kind of went off on Bob Bowman on Facebook at one point, and he came back at me on it because I was upset with him that he's on in a bunch of media stuff praising Paul Bergen, for example. I think Paul Bergen is a pedophile sex abuser. I don't think he should be praised in a public forum. But Bob's central argument sort of was like, look, it's actually similar to what you said. He said, like, I can't just wipe away my memory of, that mentorship I got from Paul Bergen. He was very influential on me. And not all of that stuff is bad.
He was on Sean too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to point that out. I mean, that's part of their connection is all three of them work together. So
yep, and
that's who Sean moved out to the West Coast with, is Paul Bergen.
Yeah, and Murray Stevens, who is in a much more, I would say, nebulous place than Paul Bergen in terms of like some accusations have been leveled against him, but they've received very, very little attention, and things are very confusing, even for me, somebody who sort of keeps track of this stuff. So that was another guy that and the moral of that story is don't argue with people on Facebook, because there wasn't much productive gained from the conversation. It's much better to have a conversation like this where you have the time and place to just sort of give things a more detailed answer and actually have a conversation with somebody else. That's why I like this kind of format. Are there other stuff like, is there stuff you've changed in the last 3 years where you go, beyond the sort of like, as you say, like all the really, really important measures to protect people, but is there stuff in your coaching style where you've gone, yeah, I just can't do it that way anymore in the wake of this?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think the good example is like trying just right now. And I heard myself say it a lot in reviews with kids, like when we were going over races from this past weekend. I'm like, yeah, we can work on that. We can do the kick. We can do that. We'll get that. We'll take care of that. We knew that. And that's not the right words. Like, it's you.
Yeah.
It's you. You can work on that. I'll give you the opportunity to work on that. Like, I am not going to be the difference. Anytime somebody comes to our team looking for a change, I'm like, well, you understand that I'm not going to be the difference. The change is going to come from you. And,
right.
Maybe the environment and a certain, way of saying something might click for you, but that is still your choice to make, and really trying to embrace that at every level and like take my ego 100% out of it. And, like I kind of alluded to earlier, it's really hard because a lot of coaches just come out with their resume like verbal vomit the second that you talk to them. And you've been with that person on the pool deck, especially at a meet, who's just like, referencing somebody they know or talking about this conversation they had with some Olympic coach. And like every time they talk to one of their kids, they're like, when I had this kid place this at Olympic trials or break this record or do this thing. And like, who cares? Like, it's not about your previous relationships. It's about your current relationship with this swimmer and how you can reach them where they're at. And you can use that success yourself, but, you know, like, reach the kid or the athlete. Don't try to like present such a grand castle of yourself that you have to have everybody come inside your walls and then everybody outside's idiots. Because that's my least favorite thing, is when coaches talk shit about other coaches. You don't have to do that to better yourself. And I think we do. And I've been guilty at times of comparing like one style to this style, or doing this instead of this. Just tell them why they're doing this. You don't have to put anything else down when you're telling them. So, you know, those kind of things for sure.
All right.
Yeah, just hyper aware of boundaries, like making sure I'm not getting texts past 9, you know, and not getting them before 7, and making sure that it's swimming related. You know, I don't follow any of my athletes on social media, but I do post things on social media that is public, because you know, the things I post are my family. And I think normalizing the fact that I have a family and a balance and other things outside of swimming, I think is a very healthy thing for the kids to understand, because I do care about the kids, and we do talk about more than just swimming at times, if they so choose, which I think is still healthy and part of the relationship building. You know, those conversations are happening, you know, with other people around, or, you know, via text, or, you know, sometimes on the phone. But you can protect yourself. I don't touch my swimmers for the most part. Like, you know, some coaches try to use their arm and like move and manipulate. I don't touch my swimmers. So, or I try, other than a high five, just, you know, there's not any real touching. And
or a fist bump in the COVID era.
yeah, or elbow bump, or
elbow bump,
foot tap. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, I guess those are the things that I've definitely, and I don't know if that's just because of, you know, the background that we've been discussing. I think that's just how our whole sport hopefully is evolving. I remember when Safe Sport first came out, all these coaches were like, I used to take the girls in the back room and give them massages and smack them on the butt when they did a good job. And I'm like, you did
what? Yeah. All right. I want to finish on a lighter note, and finish with some rapid fire questions that you've had absolutely no chance to prepare for. And I just want you to, you got to do a better job than Gary Hall Jr. did on the Brett Hawk podcast, with coming up with an immediate reaction to some of these. Okay.
I'll do my best, but I'm not as quick as Gary Hall, so I don't know.
That's true. You would actually think, for who Gary Hall is, he would have a faster reaction.
I did love all the Phoenix Swim Club references.
That's right.
Gary, you got to come swim in the new pool, but we love the Halls here.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Ooh, cookies and cream.
Oh my God, that's my favorite flavor. I love cookies and cream. All right. If you could, aliens come to visit the Earth, and they challenge us to a 400 freestyle race, and we have a time machine where we can pick anyone from any era in any suit to compete against the aliens in the 400 free. Who do you choose?
Oh man, this is tough for no preparation. You got to go Lezak. I would go Phelps. I would go Fred Bousquet. Lezak, Phelps, Freddie.
Maybe Lezak would go twice.
he could lead off and anchor. No,
we put Lezak first, and then we use a time machine to get a fresh Lezak and put him on the anchor leg as well. Actually, the question was a 400 freestyle, like a 400, like not a relay, but I like your 4x100 anyway. It's,
okay. It would have maybe Clem or something, I guess, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe Clem for the anchor leg.
The end of your relay.
Pop-off. Sorry, Pop-off. I know he wasn't a relay swimmer, but still Pop-off. A 400 freestyle.
Yeah.
Katie Ledecky.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually, gosh, I didn't even.
Easy. Come on, the most dominant
You're just crushing me.
Female in the sport.
Yeah.
Katie Ledecky, obviously.
I didn't even think cross-gender with it. I was totally going to go with a teenage Ian Thorpe, but you're right.
Come on, girl dad.
Come on.
Don't make the boy dad. Come here, Blake. Don't make the boy dad top you on those topics. Katie Ledecky.
Where's your dream location for U.S. Olympic swimming trials?
My first reaction is like the beach, like Long Beach, but weather's kind of a weird factor with that. Yeah, probably I like that beach setting.
You like the outdoor trials.
I love the outdoor trials because I'm an outdoor coach, I guess. Either that or maybe a giant stadium somewhere, like a really cool, like what's a good historic stadium? That would be fun.
Fenway Park?
Or like an SEC football stadium or something. But that would be the same thing you talked about with Fenway would be good. Fenway would be fun, or like Wrigley or something like that. Or I don't know. I guess the beach I think is very swimming in my mind, but I'm I guess West Coast in that way right now. But
I'm very intrigued.
Where's your ideal location?
I've always thought you could put it in an arena in a different city in the Midwest. I know you guys and I've had this conversation. I love the idea of it being in Minneapolis. That's something that came up as an idea. And
that stadium, that Viking stadium is really cool looking too, but could we fill it?
I still think arena size is probably good. And I'm aware that we're talking about this 6 months from, we don't even know whether, how many people are going to be able to be on a pool deck for Olympic trials, but we're in fantasy land. We're indulging here for a second. I would love Milwaukee too, even though I've never been to Milwaukee. Just sounds nice to go to a place like that. I think it's ready for a bigger city.
Well, Omaha's been great because
Omaha's been fantastic
and it's really embraced. But I like your idea.
Oh,
so this was going on behind my setting. Whoopsies. Will you go away, please, and let me finish my conversation with Chris? Just give me a couple more minutes. You know what is awesome about pandemics is when your kids get runny noses and have to get a COVID test before they can go back to school. So then you just have to figure out daycare for 4 days. Get inside. I'll come in a minute.
All right.
But I like the idea of stepping up in the Midwest because I like that. I like the feel that Omaha kind of gave, but maybe a little bigger.
Yeah. Somebody suggested New York City, and as cool as that sounds,
Madison Square Garden. That'd be kind of cool.
Logistically, New York City's really tough. It's just really, really tough. So, all right, that's all the questions I've got. I'll let you. There's a video version of this podcast, so be sure to feature Blake on it as well. My best to the whole McCaffrey family, and I'll talk to you again soon.
It was good talking to you. Thanks, Chris. I guess I don't have to hang up.